Hi everyone, my name is Alex Glaser. I'm with Harbor Research. I'm a director there. Today I'm with the CTO of niolabs, Matt Dodge, and we wanted to talk about Neo and kind of the evolution of the technology and where the company is headed from that standpoint. So before we jump into the detail, I'd like to ask Matt just to kind of explain to the audience, what is Neo?
Yeah, it's a great question. Neo is a software platform, a software tool that is designed to help people build distributed systems. So the idea is that you have a system of stuff that has to work together, whether you know it or not. There are things that you want to connect together, and Neo is the software that is going to help you really connect those things together that previously probably would have been pretty difficult to have working together.
We spent a lot of time on the webinar talking about PubKeeper, and I think there were a few questions from the audience that we didn't get to address, and one of them was just, how does PubKeeper actually help me as the user, and how is it different than other platforms out there?
Yeah, PubKeeper is one of the products here that I'm probably the most excited about. It's a communications tool, and it's taking the same agnostic and ambivalent qualities of Neo and blocks and just being able to kind of run it anywhere and applying it to communication protocols. And so when we designed Neo originally, we sort of said, yeah, we want to be neutral to the communication protocol as much as we can, but there was kind of a caveat there that you had to choose one and then use it everywhere. You could choose whichever one you wanted, but it has to be the same one everywhere. But that kind of falls apart pretty quickly, especially the bigger these systems get and the more we push systems to the edge. You can't assume that everything in your system is going to speak the same protocol. So we kind of looked at the market and saw what was out there and couldn't really find anything, so we decided to build this. And so what PubKeeper does is it allows systems to communicate. It allows entities within the system to communicate with each other in different protocols, and you can have these different protocols used throughout the system. There's a couple really cool benefits to PubKeeper from the user's perspective. So one is that the user doesn't have to worry about encryption. So it can rely on data getting from one part of the system to another part fully end-to-end encrypted, and PubKeeper takes care of all that for you. The other thing is it allows service designers, people that are building Neo services with blocks and applying them to instances, it allows them to just publish data to a topic and not worry about who the subscribers are. So as we build larger and larger systems, eventually entities should be in control of what data gets published and what data they want to consume, but not have to worry about building those links to other nodes and configuring the other nodes to then listen and subscribe to it. PubKeeper will kind of handle that handshake and that negotiation for communication.
Great. And so, another question that came up, and it was about Google and Xively and all the other 250 platforms out there, right? As Harbor Research, we've looked at these platforms numerously, and there's a few that stand out, and niolabs is one of them. And from your perspective, what's fundamentally different about Neo from these other platforms?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so we're Google Cloud partners, and so honestly, I was excited by the Xively acquisition. I think we're an edge platform. We're a distributed platform that kind of runs everywhere, but there's often a lot of desire and pull. People want more services. They want more product features in the cloud, things that they can do, learning and analytics and all that, and those are paramount. You have to have those inside of a distributed system. But for us to go build those in addition to kind of our edge platform is just a lot of work. And so for me, Xively and Google just means that we can all kind of work together, and we can be the edge and they can provide the cloud analytics and the device management and all that, and we'll provide the logic and intelligence at the edge. And it seems like it's a pretty good match to me.
Great. So if I think about, there's EdgeX Foundry out there, there's all these open source tools. I mean, when I think about Neo and I think about the architecture, right? I think one of the things that we've always been impressed with is that it's flexible and it's intuitive. So a user can get in and they can leverage the tools and quickly get up to speed. So when you think about open sourcing parts of Neo, I mean, how does that impact usage, and how do you see that kind of driving adoption in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm a huge proponent of open source, and coming from a development background, I love open source, and I wish more stuff was open source. I'm a little disappointed in really the lack of enterprise adoption of open source. I think there's kind of, at least in the enterprise world, there's an association with open source being used for more hacky projects, things that are, oh, well, that's like a prototype. That's not going to work in an industrial hardened setting, when that's really not the case. So I am excited about kind of the push of more and more stuff that's going open source. EdgeX Foundry is a great example. I mean, their stuff is, it's all out there. Mm-hmm. And so for Neo, we're trying to make a platform that's going to connect millions, billions, trillions of things And to think that we can do that, we can connect all of those as a small little company in Broomfield, Colorado is unreasonable. So we need to rely on open source. We need this community to help build this. So that's why all of our block development is fully open source. The block framework is there. So anytime a new device, a new API, a new web service or whatever comes up, they pop up like a dozen a day come up. You can build blocks for that and the community can build blocks for that. And I one day hope to envision that people will release new tools and new services and things with an accompanying Neo block. And they'll say, hey, look, here's this new cool thing we built. Here's the Neo block for it. Plug it into your Neo system and do with it whatever you want. So it's a way to kind of bring things together.
Got it. You know, one of the things that during the webinar, we had all of the individuals log in and actually use their phone to become part of a Neo system, which was fascinating. And you know, we talked about the power of being able to change provisions and look at different cuts of the data quickly. And I think one of the things that caught my eyes is you said, you know, we're developing a Neo system right now. You're part of a Neo system. Can you just explain that to the audience as what that means?
Yeah, Neo system. A system is it's a pretty loaded word, and we use it here a lot. So I think I often use it and have all this background context, but a lot of times that doesn't come through to the person I'm talking to. A system is really just a collection of things. It's things that have to work together. So within a Neo system, you can have different devices. You can have databases, you can have APIs, sensors, whatever. But basically we have different things. We have things across the network that they have data and they want to work together. So kind of the rule of thumb within a Neo system is that an entry or an entity that is part of a system can communicate with anything else that's in the system. So the system is also a semi-trusted space. There is a permissions model within the system, so like some topics of information can't go from one place to another. You can define all that through pubkeeper access control. But the general idea is that the system is things that want to work together and share data with each other. So a system could be your house, a system could be a factory, your car is a system. Sometimes there's broader systems, like we built a system today in the webinar that was global, right? I mean, there's people from all over the world joining their phones and data's moving around between those devices in real time. And so that's what a Neo system is all about. So really a Neo system is a combination of compute and logic on a specific device or on the devices throughout the system, and then it's the motion of the data between those devices. So it's how data moves between them.
Cool. Matt, obviously there's been a lot of attention to artificial intelligence in the market. And you know, I just was curious as the CTO of niolabs, how you see artificial intelligence you know, being integrated or being leveraged in Neo's systems.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a very important topic these days, and specifically, I mean, artificial intelligence is a huge, broad term, and there's one aspect that is really just hot right now, and that's machine learning. And I guess what I see that's sometimes unfortunate is that machine learning and deep learning on data is often an excuse to store a lot of data. So the whole big data paradigm, it's all really about, let's just save a bunch of stuff. We don't really know what we're going to do with it now, but then we're going to run this like really fancy algorithm against it and figure out some sort of insight from it. And that's cool. You want these insights. You want to be able to learn and react to things as they change. But I just think that that model's a little bit latent. And I think if we can really capture the fact that what we care about is not the data, it's the insight, it's the analytic from the machine learning, from the algorithm, then let's focus on that. So what we can do with Neo is we can actually push a lot of that detection to the edge. And we can get machine learning running at the edge and start developing these insights without the cost of a lot of data. Obviously you need some historical data to be able to look back. You still need to actually go look at characteristics of significant events and see how they differ from nominal or normal state. But I think we can do that anywhere. And it doesn't need to happen in the cloud, it doesn't even need to happen on big machines. That's kind of another misconception, that you need to have some huge server to process all this data. And obviously it's going to depend on how much data you're talking about, but we have implementations running right now where we're running TensorFlow and machine learning algorithms at the edge on small devices, and they can ingest data and learn and act on it, and we can actually take those insights and then share them throughout the rest of the system. We can share them upwards to the cloud, to other nodes in the system, we can save them, reuse them. Yeah, you don't need to transmit and store a lot of data to have machine learning do what it's supposed to do.
So Matt, on the webinar, there were several questions that came up around IoT security. And one of them was about, you know, listen, in industrial settings like manufacturing, oil and gas, mining, security is a big deal. You know, and if you think about whether it's refineries, you think about manufacturing, automotive, wherever it may be, how does Neo address security from an industrial grade or industrial standpoint?
Yeah, great question. So really important topic. We could go into a lot of detail on it. And it's also, I'm glad there was questions about it, because really you can't have IoT without security, without a plan around security. And it's just so important, especially in an enterprise setting. It's just with privacy and control and access and everything, you need to have it. It has to be there. So there's a few different ways that Neo actually attaches to security. It's such like a big term that we actually need to kind of segment this into a few different conversations. But the first is user management. So authentication and authorization, basically determining who a user is. And a user, by the way, isn't always a person. Sometimes it's a website where you're controlling something. Sometimes it is a sensor. It's a piece of hardware that's a button. There are things. So really, in Neo, a user is an instance. A user is a signal producer. But we need to figure out two things. One is this person or this thing who they say they are? And two, are they allowed to do the thing that they're trying to do right now? That could be really anything. The model in Neo is built to be pretty abstract, so I mean, anything could be changing the configuration of a block, it could be starting or stopping a service, it could be dragging a slider on a UI. Are you allowed to change the moisture thresholds at a vineyard, for example? So Neo has a built-in authentication authorization model. It also has an interface to plug into a lot of the industry standard models. So if you have an Active Directory set up or you have a SAML system set up, Neo will plug into that, and you can just interface, and you can use the existing authentication tools that you're using today. So that's one aspect of security.
Great.
There's kind of another aspect, which is more of the data encryption and maybe data privacy. So when in a Neo system, data's moving all over the place, and sometimes you don't even necessarily know where it's moving. So encryption of that data and understanding and awareness of where that data is at any given time is important. So that's basically the #1 selling point of PubKeeper is it's going to encrypt your data as it gets sent. There's a really cool, the way that PubKeeper works is it's a matchmaker, so it's trying to match up two nodes, one that wants to publish data and one that wants to subscribe to that same data, and it's going to match them up and figure out the best possible protocol for them to communicate on. So during that negotiation, during that handshake, PubKeeper can do a key exchange at that point. So both edge nodes will have a shared key, and so they can encrypt and decrypt the data there. It's a symmetric key that they just communicate with. And even if that data makes hops along the way and maybe other nodes in the system, so if I have a really lightweight edge node that has to go through a couple gateways to get up to the cloud, the key is only exchanged between the two edge nodes so that the data is fully end-to-end encrypted. The hops along the way actually can't decrypt the data, they never know the key. So it's one of the cool aspects of PubKeeper, allows you to end-to-end encrypt.
So Matt, obviously, we highlighted the agriculture demo and we looked at Neo actually being deployed, and you guys are in factories today to show the value of Neo. Are there any other use cases or applications that you're seeing with your team with Neo that you're excited about?
Oh yeah, good question. I mean, there's a lot, honestly. Yeah. Typically what I look at, what gets me the most excited is when I see existing places. I don't want to call them systems yet because then we're about to convert to that, but existing things, setups that have really, really disparate systems that no way that could talk to each other, right? And they have tons of signal producers. One of those that I see is retail. So, I mean, a store, either on the store side or maybe even on the supply chain side before that, there is just so much data that's there that's being untapped. And whether it's, I mean, you have point of sale systems, you have security systems, you have inventory systems, you have all these things, and bringing those together just sounds like such a headache. But with Neo, it's really not. They're different signal producers, and once a piece of data is a signal in Neo, you can really relate it to and correlate it with anything else in the system. So I guess I just see the volume of data that could come out of a retail environment, data that's not even really being listened to now. How many things are actually on this shelf right now? How many people are actually in my store? Data that's there but that people don't really know, and I just see so much future excitement around that.
Another question that came up on the webinar was, it wasn't a question, it was a statement. So what don't you do? so what doesn't Neo do?
Yeah, it's a funny question. I could almost argue that Neo doesn't do anything. That probably wouldn't be good from a marketing perspective. But Neo's objective is to allow you to do what you want to do. So we really don't impose any kind of constraints or restrictions on what you can do with Neo to build a system. So it's your system, it's your data, it's your devices that are getting connected. You do what you want to do with it. So I think sometimes it might appear like we try and do all these different things, but in reality, we're just the ones building on Neo to do this. So the Neo platform just exists throughout the system to facilitate the distribution of logic and the real-time communication of data throughout the system.
So obviously today, Neo is partnering with Google, right? But you're open and agnostic to AWS, Azure. How do you view those different clouds from the CTO perspective?
To me, the cloud is a host. Right? I mean, the cloud is basically a highly available machine where Neo can run. And I guess there's two sides of the cloud. One is sort of that hardware infrastructure side where I can actually run Neo and do things. And the other is sort of the suite of cloud services that tend to come with cloud environments. So like Google Cloud Platform or Amazon Web Services, they have a whole bunch of stuff. They have load balancers and all these kind of other additional tools that you can sort of integrate in. But I guess I really see I see the cloud as a place to run Neo. It's just another part of the system, and for some configurations and for some implementations, the cloud is going to be heavily used. For some, it's not going to be used at all. If you need to rely on local offline access, then the cloud is not going to be a host that you want to run stuff on. So for me, with Google, the partnership with Google is just great because I think that they've embraced this. Even being their mission to drive obviously more cloud adoption, they still see that it's not the solution for everything, and they agree with us that really the distribution of logic and context everywhere is important. And so I respect that. I think that it's cool to see that someone that they know where their strong suit is, they know where they play well, but they also see that there's other places where stuff needs to happen.
Great. So Matt, to follow up on that question about the cloud service providers, you've seen announcements from Azure and AWS around Lambda about them sort of migrating to the edge. How do you see those solutions? Are they competitive? Are they counterbalancing? How does that interact with Neo?
I think that they're maybe somewhat competitive, but not really. I think that the whole AWS greengrass and moving Lambda to the edge, the idea is still that we're just doing some context there and ultimately getting data up to the cloud. It's not replacing the cloud, it's just it's a means to funnel data up to their cloud data center. And that's not what Neo's about. Neo's about running things kind of wherever you want to, and so I guess there's a little bit of a crossover there because Lambda you can run on edge devices, but yeah, I mean the objective of Neo is just to run somewhere and to do the things that you want to do, whereas the objective, at least in my opinion, of greengrass is more to kind of process data and then ultimately move it up to the cloud, because then that's where the magic happens. And I guess that's what I disagree with, is that not everything has to happen in the cloud for it to be interesting.
Great. All right, so I had a couple of questions that just came to mind. I figured while we're here, we'll do them real quick, if that's cool. Okay, so I want to switch gears a little bit and ask you about PubKeeper a bit more. And so when you guys were designing it, I mean, it's for a common user. It's not for somebody who has to have an engineering degree or be a full-time developer. They can actually leverage it. So what went into the thinking? How did you design it? How did you come up with the process so that anybody can use PubKeeper?
Yeah, PubKeeper, it does have really two types of users. One is just the user side that wants to really just publish data and not worry about that plumbing under the hood of how it's going to get from point A to point B. That's what PubKeeper is about, is that it's there to figure out the best way to take the data that you want to publish and get it where it needs to go, or the other way around. If you want to subscribe to the data, it figures out the best way to get it to you. So from a user's perspective, if you're just building with Neo and dragging services and blocks and doing all that, then you almost don't even have to think about PubKeeper being there. You kind of just put this publisher block there and enter in the topic tree that you want to publish to, and the rest is just kind of magic. It just sort of happens, and data, hey, cool, it popped up on this other node 5,000 miles away, and just like that. So that's the kind of like the easy user side of PubKeeper. And then on the other side, though, you do have to facilitate people being able to make that happen. Right, so we need to be able to add new protocols easily. We need to be able to have consistent security and handshakes and handle failure and handle things like nodes not being online when messages are trying to be exchanged or they drop offline. So being able to open source a lot of the protocol development, we call it brew development, it just enables us to really have access to really any number of protocols that are out there, and you can just convert it to a brew. Much like you could write a block for a new API, you can write a new brew for a new protocol pretty easily.
You know, one that came up on the webinar was MQTT.
Yes.
Are you all able to leverage, MQTT protocols inside of Neo?
Absolutely, yeah. MQTT is a brew for PubKeeper. So it's just one of the many protocols that PubKeeper supports communicating with. So again, PubKeeper is not a translator, it's a matchmaker. So if person A comes online, says, I speak MQTT, person B comes online, says, I speak MQTT, PubKeeper goes, I don't know what MQTT is, but it sounds like you guys can talk it, so start talking MQTT, and then bam, it happens. So the PubKeeper server itself, the broker itself, doesn't have to actually know the underlyings of the different protocols. It just has to know you two speak this, and so you're gonna use it.
Great. So Matt, thank you so much for your time today. And everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to visit harborresearch.com or niolabs.com. I'm Alex Glaser. This is Matt Dodge. Thank you.